The gates of Seabreeze Estates swung open slowly. Troy, a young man in an immaculate shirt, sat at the security desk. He glanced at the Bennett resident sticker on the windshield, waved, and handed over a magazine. "Are we having guests tonight?" he asked politely. "I saw the neighbors delivering wine." "Maybe," Mark Bennett replied, without looking up. "We haven't decided yet." Troy nodded and noted the license plate. Mark drove past perfectly manicured lawns. Each house had identical white lights. The Bennetts had a new trash can in front of the house, hidden behind a decorative screen and HOA requirement. Mark turned off the engine, peered into the mailbox, and pulled out a heavy envelope. Another letter from the neighborhood council. The house smelled of orange peeling liquid inside. Laura stood in the kitchen in her sweatpants, washing clear glasses and talking to a friend on speakerphone. "Saturday at Cosgrove's at 7, she said. "Yeah, keys in the bowl, just like the ad. No, it's not about sex for the sake of sex. It's about trust and openness." Laura pressed the button and turned off the speakerphone. "Hello, what's this from HOA?" Mark placed the envelope on the table and sat down. He opened the letter and read slowly. "Level 1 alert. A hose and bucket were observed in your driveway at 7:12 on Friday. Ensure equipment is stored in the garage. Next violation. Fine." "The hose," he said. "The hose is in the driveway." "They're boring," Laura said, still sipping her glasses. "You'll take them off later? And don't forget 10 minutes on the golf course. You need to warm up for Saturday." "Before what? Before the show of hypocrisy?" "Don't start," Laura said, setting her glass down. "This is an adult evening. That's the way it is here. We live in a place where people don't pretend to be monks. And yes, this is a test of maturity." Mark went into his office, sat down at his laptop, and opened his email. An email from HR came in. Reminder, next module of inclusive leadership training. Subject, attitudes toward non-standard family models. He closed the email and looked out the window. A neighbor drove down the street in a golf cart with the Pelican Dunes logo. Mark picked up his golf club, pulled the hose out of the driveway, put the bucket in the garage, and got into his car. The club's training pitch was almost empty. An old man in a tight-laced cap was taking a lesson from a young coach. Mark placed the ball, took a couple of swings, and missed. "Hard week?" someone on the right asked. It was Tom Peterson, a neighbor on the block. He worked as a realtor, always smiling the same way, as if a photographer was taking his picture. "You could say that," Mark replied. "The HOA sent another letter, and we're having a party at Cosgrove's." Tom chuckled. "Raise, so you're already in the pool." "In what other pool?" "On the list of those who are ready to live in a modern way. Don't worry. Half of the people come and go, nothing happens. The main thing is not to be tense. People don't like it." Mark swung again. The ball flew straight and landed softly. He collected his thoughts. "Then why the cup?" "It's a symbol." Tom picked up his stick and lowered his voice. "A lot of people here work for companies that look at it as a sign of tolerance. No one would say it outright. But if you sit there like a stone statue and judge everyone, you're going to have a hard time in this ecosystem. You know that." Mark knew. His new boss, Douglas Hill, liked to talk about a culture of freedom and no shame, just choice. At corporate meetings, topics about partnership agreements, life after 40, and self-realization came up. This was presented as a sign of the ability to manage oneself and respect the decisions of others. In the public chat, no one argued. "Laura's sure it'll do me good," Mark said, switching to an 8-ball. "I'm not sure it's about us." "You just don't like to go off script," Tom said. "But here, everything is by the book. No one drags you in by force. No surprises. And, to be honest, most of the time it ends with a conversation." He picked up the ball and put it on the grass. "The main thing is, don't say later that you were lured. They don't like that here." At home, Laura laid out her clothes on the couch. An off-the-shoulder dress, black, neatly cut. She had pinned a tag to it that said Drake Boutique. Next to it were heels, a box of lipstick. "What are you going to wear?" she asked. "I have one nice suit and a plain shirt," Mark replied, "like for a presentation. I'm not a comedian." Laura smiled for a second, but quickly hid it. "Can I get rid of the sarcasm? We're not here for the laughs. Ray is a professional. He brings together people who aren't afraid to come and say, 'We're different, and that's okay.' It helps with business. Parties like this aren't about dirt. They're about connections, about being able to hold on." Mark sat on the edge of the bed. "Let's talk. If we come, I don't put the keys. I don't want to." "You don't have to," Laura said slowly. "Nobody's forcing you. But it's important to me that you don't blame me for choosing differently. Otherwise, how? I'll put the keys down. It's my choice." Mark looked at her. "We've been married for 22 years. Do you really think that my choice is separate from your choice? I think that at 48, I have the right not to explain my interests to people who live by catalogs from the 90s. She folded her dress. "You pretended to be okay with it for many years. Me too. But now I want to live differently, without scenes." He opened his mouth, but said nothing. Glasses clinked in the kitchen as Laura moved them onto the shelf. Mark walked into the living room. There was a new TV on the wall and a white cabinet with paperwork underneath. He pulled out the mortgage file, put it back down. Everything was recorded and neatly labeled in folders. The HOA had approved the paint color on the exterior, approved the hedges, approved the blinds in the bedroom. Mark found that it was easier to live with rules, even if the rules were made by people he didn't respect. That evening, they went to dinner at the club. The restaurant had a sign that said, "Wine tasting, Friday 7 p.m. At the next table sat Carla, the HOA chairwoman, and her husband, Jim. Carla always spoke in a raised voice, as if the room was noisy. "Mark, Laura, nice to see you," she said, leaning in slightly. "You have a beautiful facade. Finally got the shade up to specification. Thank you for your attention to detail." "Thanks for the feedback," Laura replied with a tight smile. "And one more thing," Carla continued. "We're updating the rules on parking golf carts at communal pools. The letter will arrive soon. Nothing serious, just markers on the pavement. And Laura, I hear you'll be at Ray's tomorrow. Good choice. He's a smart man. It's good to see that we're building an audience that understands that living without constraints is not a threat, but an opportunity." Mark felt a tension in his chest. He put down his fork and took a sip of water. "We're still thinking about it," he said. "It's not a question of taste. It's a question of boundaries." Carla propped her chin up with her palm. "Borders are great. The main thing is that borders are not walls. Air does not live in walls." Laura intervened. "We'll figure it out. Thank you, Carla." After dinner, they went out onto the terrace. The humid air was heavy but bearable. The bartender was standing at the counter, mixing mojitos. Mark ordered a non-alcoholic one, Laura a Prosecco. They sat by the railing. "You don't like the idea," Laura said calmly. "But you know I'm not your enemy. I want you to look at this as an adult project, as a new kind of responsibility. No betrayal. This is an experiment. We're not in church." "I understand," he replied, "but I don't like the way you refer to our marriage as a project. It's easier. You talk about work like that all the time. You have everything planned out. Roadmap, KPI. Why should family be a set of taboos? Because when you set KPIs in marriage, you stop hearing the living person." "I hear you," Laura raised her glass. "And that's why I speak a language you understand. You're not an emotional romantic. You're a rational manager. Let's acknowledge the obvious, and let's acknowledge my right to be different." He sighed. "If we come and I leave at some point, will that be okay?" "It'll be your decision," Laura replied. "I won't stop you. Just please don't make a scene. Don't ruin people's evenings, and don't pretend you've been set up." The next day, Mark was working from home. He joined a morning call. Douglas, the boss, was talking about expanding the team and thinking flexibly. "We hire people who are not afraid of new lifestyles," he said. "That's important to our product strategy. We're building a platform of trust. After the call, Mark received a personal message from Douglas. How are you and Laura? Saw you on Cosgrove's guest list. He's a good partner. Don't worry, it's safe there. The main thing is to be honest with yourself. Mark responded briefly, Thank you. I'll keep that in mind. Laura brought snacks from the supermarket in the evening and packed them into containers. That's for Sunday, she said. Ray's got catering. I don't want to look like a country bumpkin with homemade dips. She looked at her husband. Are you okay with that? I will try not to be an idiot. That's enough. They went to a small shopping center around the corner to buy Mark a new shirt. The store was noisy with music. A salesman with a name tag that said Ben suggested something lighter and younger. Mark chose a light blue one without a pattern. Laura asked for another one, white, in case the first one seemed boring. At the checkout, Laura paid with her card. I don't like it when you pay for me, Mark said in the parking lot. We have a common budget, she replied. Stop measuring everything with individual wallets. At home, Laura began to tidy up her clothes. Mark checked the batteries in the intercom, adjusted the thermostat, and walked through the rooms. In the guest room, there was a blanket on the bed, with old magazines underneath. He stopped and looked at himself in the mirror. His hair was gray at the temples. His face was tired. He wasn't sure he wanted to see himself in the light of Saturday. That evening, a message came into the Seabreeze residence group chat. Reminder, Saturday, 7 p.m. at Ray Cosgrove's. Parking is only along the east side of Bay Lane. Please be respectful of your neighbors. The message was liked by Carl, Tom, and several other names. There's no turning back, Laura said, reading the chat. And that's a good thing. There are always some, Mark answered. Then name this path. Stay home. And what will this give? Rest. Peace is not a goal, Laura said. It's a pause. We live, we don't stop. They fell silent. The news was on TV. The footage showed a crowded Miami airport, and someone was arguing about flight delays. Mark listened without really listening. Inside, he felt like everything around him was moving according to schedule, and he was falling behind. Saturday morning, Laura went to yoga. Mark stayed home, cleaned the pool, made a list of things to do for the gardener. Another letter from the Hoa. Remember, metal porch chairs are only allowed in white and sand. He put the letter with the others. He drank coffee. He called Tom. Are you scared? Tom asked. I don't understand why I need this. Perhaps there is no need, said Tom. But sometimes it is easier to come once and see everything with your own eyes than to build theories. And then you will decide. I don't want to put the keys away. And don't bet. What if Laura leaves mine? She has no right, Tom said. Ray's got it straight. You put yours in. No games. I would like to believe it. At 3 o'clock, Laura returned and showed off her new handbag. A gift to myself, she said. I deserve it. Of course, Mark replied. You work a lot. Laura looked at him more closely. Look, I'll tell you and I won't come back. I don't want eternal, reserved care. I want a real solution. If you're against it, say so. We won't go. But then, when I say I need space, don't be surprised. Space from what? From the constant, not now. She fell silent. We've been together for 20 years. We both know that the fire that everyone refers to has long been gone from our home. We are honest people. Let's be honest here, too. Do you want another man? I want to not be afraid of my life, she said. That's it. They fell silent again. Mark tried to imagine them canceling, texting Ray, telling the neighbors, we changed our minds. He imagined the smiles, the comments, the hidden messages. He felt worse. By 6 they were dressed. Laura had put her hair up in a bun, put on earrings, and sprayed on perfume. Mark had buttoned up his blue shirt and black belt. Shall we go in one car? He asked. Yes, said Laura. We arrive together and leave as it happens. How will it work out? Mark, she said calmly, you said it yourself. Everyone has their own choice. He nodded. They walked out of the house. The thermostat switched to away. Mark closed the door, the keys jingling in his hand. He put them in his pocket and looked at Laura. Let's make a deal. If I feel bad, I'll tell you. Fine. And you won't humiliate me in front of others. I'd never put you down, Laura replied, but I won't answer to Carla or Tom or anyone. We're adults. They got in the car. The gates of Seabreeze Estates opened again. Troy waved at them. There were cars with identical parking permits already parked along the road to Ray's house. Mark parked on the east side, like in the chat. He took off his seatbelt. He looked at the house, the lights inside, the music, the people in the hall. Laura put her hand on his shoulder. Breathe. Everything won't be as scary as you paint. I don't paint, he said. I just live. Then he lives. They got out of the car and walked to the steps leading to the front door. Ray Cosgrove stood on the porch, tall, in a light jacket, with a neat beard. He smiled at everyone who came up the steps. The Bennetts, he said when he saw them. Welcome. Glad you came. We keep it simple. Bar on the left, lounge straight ahead. The rest is as you go. No strings attached. You know what suits you. Mark smiled back, feeling his jaw tighten. Laura nodded at Ray. They went inside, checked their coats, and got glasses of water. The music was soft. People were talking about schools, vacations, the real estate market. On a dresser in the corner sat a large glass bowl. Next to it was a sign, your keys, your choice. Mark looked at the glass for a moment and then away. Laura looked too, but said nothing. They walked to the bar. Laura picked up a glass. Mark did the same. He took a sip and thought he still had time. He could leave at any moment. He could choose not to participate. And yet here he was. Let's go say hello to Tom and Carla, Laura said. And Ray again. And just listen to people. Mark nodded. He felt the weariness rising inside him, but he held it in. Today, he wanted to understand where they were. He wanted to understand it himself, without anyone else saying anything. But there was already a crack between the smooth picture and what was at home. He saw it and could no longer pretend it wasn't there. Ray's house was loud but not overwhelming. A tall guy stood at the entrance with a clipboard and name stickers. He smiled and asked guests to check in. Laura Bennett, Mark Bennett, Laura said, holding out her hand. Great. Here are your badges. And please look at the short rules. The guy pointed to the tablet. Everything is voluntary. No photos. Keys are a symbol of consent. If you throw them, it means you are ready to get acquainted. If you don't throw them, you remain observers. Any questions, ask me or Ray. Laura nodded. Mark read the text to the end, although there were few letters. He liked the part about voluntariness. He turned his head. Ray was standing in the hall with a glass of water and greeting someone, clapping them on the shoulder. Good to see you, Ray said, spotting them. Come on in. Bar on the left, small brief in the lounge. Then it's free. The living room was spacious, with soft sofas and a large rug. On a low table stood a glass bowl, transparent, full of keychains. Next to it was a sign, "Put your bedroom key here." Underneath, it was a framed sheet of paper, safety rules. A couple of points about safe words, about private territory, about refusal without explanation. The barman makes a nice non-alcoholic gin and tonic, someone said behind him. It was Tom. Relax, it's okay. Laura had a Prosecco. Mark asked for ice water. They walked over to the window. The lights in the garden were flickering. There was talk. Mark made a mental note. There were a lot of people here, familiar faces. Some were lawyers, some were from HR at a nearby company, a couple from the school where Laura's friend taught. He noticed Douglas, the boss, in the far corner. He was standing with two men, arguing quietly and intensely. Mark pretended not to see. Ray stepped up a small step so everyone could see. Friends, he said, we have a simple scheme. Nothing obligatory, nothing violent. The keys are your voice. If you throw them, it means you are ready to meet. If you don't throw them, it means you are watching and talking. There is a consultant, Sarah, nearby. She is present if someone needs to talk or boundaries need to be discussed. The cameras are turned off in the bedrooms, the phones are in the locker by the entrance. If someone wants to leave, they just leave. People nodded and began to whisper. Sarah, a woman in her 40s, in a casual suit, raised her hand in greeting. Mark felt his stomach tighten, although nothing unexpected had been said. I'm going to the ladies' room, said Laura, in just a couple of minutes. Go, he replied. He stayed by the window, looking at the garden and trying to breathe evenly. A woman in a light dress approached him. Is this your first time? She asked. Yes. I'm Vivienne. My husband and I come sometimes. People are different. Some are looking for adventure, some are looking for a conversation. The main thing is not to feign confidence if you don't have it. It's not appreciated here. It's better to say it straight out. I'm not ready. Sounds logical, Mark said. Logical isn't always simple. Vivienne smiled and walked over to the group at the bar. Laura returned. She looked calm and collected. Well, she asked. I won't quit, Mark said. I feel uncomfortable. I don't want to be tested. I'm not demanding, Laura said. It's your decision. Then let's just hang out. Mark raised his glass. Let's talk to people and then leave. Go ahead, she nodded. They walked around the room, said hello to Carla and Jim, exchanged phrases about parking and the pool. Someone discussed a golf school for teenagers. Someone else discussed insurance prices. The conversations were ordinary, even boring. Only the bowl stood in the center, like a household object, and people sometimes came up, took off the keychain, and threw it in. The sound of glass and metal was brief. No one commented. Are you ready? Ray asked suddenly, noticing them again. Or are you just going to watch for now? We'll watch, Mark said. Thank you. Ray nodded and switched to another group. Laura looked at him carefully. Are you absolutely sure? Yes. Okay. She went to the snack table, picked up a plate, put some olives, cheese, a couple of crackers. Mark remained by the sofa. Douglas came up to him. Mark, he said, as if surprised. I didn't expect you to come. Good to see you. Hi, Doug. How does it feel? I'm trying to get used to the environment. It's simple, Douglas said. No one is forcing anyone. But I'm glad you're here. It shows you understand our culture. People who don't hide behind old words work better as a team. They don't dramatize other people's choices. He smiled briefly and adjusted his sleeve. See you later. Mark nodded, feeling awkward about this conversation, like an assessment that hadn't been announced in advance. Laura returned with a plate. Did Doug approach you? Yes. I asked how it felt. I don't like it when people look at me like I'm a training participant right next to the cheese plate. Get used to it, Laura said calmly. Everything is like that here. No one is hiding from anyone. Ray climbed the step again. Friends, he said. For those who are ready, there are 2 bowls here, the main one and the guest one. If you want to leave the keys, but without a pair yet, put them in the main one. If you want to meet in the conversation room without a bedroom, put them in the guest one. At the end of the evening, the host helps with matches. People nodded. Several stood up and threw down keychains. Laura held the plate, silent. Then she put the plate on the edge of the table and picked up her purse. I think so, she said quietly. What I? Mark asked. I'll put it down. Mine. Yes, Laura answered. Mine. She took a small black key from her purse on a simple metal ring. Mark recognized the key to their bedroom, the same one he had once put in when they changed the knobs. Laura went to the bowl and put it inside. The sound was just as short. She turned to Mark. Is everything okay? He felt his mouth go dry. Do as you see fit, he said. I can't. I'm not asking. They stood in the living room for a while. A woman from HR of another company came up to them, asked about the wind on the coast, about the prices of gasoline. The conversation was empty. Mark answered with nods. Laura smiled politely. Then Laura said, I'll leave my bag in the cloakroom. Please hold my jacket. No problem. He took off his jacket, remaining in his shirt. Laura went into the hallway. Mark stood by the sofa, holding his jacket by the shoulders. Vivian called out to him. "It's comfortable here," she said. "It's not stuffy." Ray thought of everything. "He always has everything thought out," Mark replied. Laura returned a minute later, calm and collected. "Let's go outside," she said. "It's hot here." They went out onto the terrace. There were high tables by the pool. People were talking. The bartender was pouring lemonade. Mark felt like he could breathe more freely. He remembered how they had sat in a dive bar in Jacksonville when they were 20 and argued about what they would become. He had talked about a stable job and a house. Laura had talked about an interest in people and traveling. He caught himself thinking about that and turned away. "I'll leave early anyway," he said. "I don't want to sit and wait for the lottery." "It's your choice," Laura repeated. "Just don't make a scene. Please." "I don't make scenes here." He put on his jacket. Laura looked straight ahead. "Shall we talk at home?" "I'll think about it," he said. They went back into the living room to get his keys and phone from the locker by the door. Mark opened the locker, picked up his dealership keychain, and checked that all his keys were there. There was a house key, a bedroom key, and a car key. He put the keychain in his pocket. Laura looked over his shoulder, then back at him. "Will you get there okay?" she asked. "Yes." He said goodbye to Ray with a quick nod. Ray responded in kind. On the way out, he bumped into Douglas, who smiled. "Are you leaving already?" "Yes. My head hurts." "Take care of yourself," Douglas said. "Sometimes a break helps." It was damp outside. Mark got into the car and sat for a couple of minutes without turning on the engine. Then he turned on the headlights and drove to the gate. Troy at the post raised the barrier. "Is everything okay?" he asked. "Yes, just tired." "I understand. The community loves activity," Troy said. "Good night." At home, Mark turned on the light in the hallway, took off his shoes, and went into the kitchen. He poured himself some water and drank it in one gulp. He took out his keychain and put it on the table. He opened the medicine drawer and took a headache pill. His phone vibrated, a message from Laura. "I'll stay another hour. Don't wait up." He wrote, "Okay." He walked into the bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed. Anger was rising inside him, not sharp, but precise. He remembered Laura saying, "This is my choice," putting the key down. He remembered Douglas talking about culture. He felt bad that he was not a person here, but an indicator. He got up, went to his office, and sat down at his laptop. There was a letter from HR in his inbox about the next module on alternative family forms. He closed the letter. The phone vibrated again. Tom wrote, "Are you gone? Is everything okay?" "I am. Everything is okay," Mark replied. He stood up and walked around the house. On the wall in the living room hung a framed photo of them from 10 years ago. Laura in a denim jacket, he in a t-shirt. He looked at the photo and thought not about the past, but about the fact that now he needed to maintain a simple line, not to go where he did not want. He said to himself out loud, "I don't have to." This phrase helped him. He poured water again and opened the bedroom windows. The air was warm, but bearable. He turned the air conditioner down a few degrees and lay down without undressing. He waited for the anger to go away and repeated to himself, "I saved us from stupidity. I stopped something that would be hard to explain later." It sounded reasonable. He believed it and calmed down. The phone blinked again. A message from Douglas. "Glad you could come by. I know this is tough. It's important you didn't make a big deal out of it." Mark didn't answer. He put the phone face down. Half an hour later, he stood up, went into the kitchen, and locked the door with the bottom lock. He opened the small safe in the pantry where the documents and spare keys were kept. There was a second bedroom key there, which he had not used for a long time. He picked it up and put it back down. He closed the safe. He returned to the living room, turned off the floor lamp, leaving only the nightlight in the hallway. He felt calmer when the order was obvious. He opened the intercom app on his phone and checked the history. Who had called, who had come to the door in the last few days. Nothing unusual. He closed the app. He sat down on the couch and stared at the blank TV screen. There was no picture in his head, only a clear thought, like an instruction. I don't need this. He repeated it again. He didn't lock the door on the top turn. Laura always scolded him if he locked both. He left one lock and went back into the bedroom. He lay down on top of the bedspread. He put the phone on the nightstand. He knew he would soon fall asleep. He felt a little ashamed for leaving, but he felt almost no shame because he had found an excuse. He decided that he had made the right move. He even wrote Laura briefly, "If anything happens, call. I'm here." She didn't answer. Mark closed his eyes. The house was quiet. There was no anxiety inside. He rolled over and began to count his breaths. He didn't think about the cup. He decided not to think. He decided that tomorrow they would sit down and discuss everything calmly. He would talk about boundaries, about trust, about not being pushed around while his neighbors looked at him. He would make a list of talking points. He could do that. He held the line when others strayed. 2 hours later, the doorbell rang unexpectedly loudly. Mark sat up in bed and looked at the intercom screen. Douglas was standing on the threshold. He had his keys in his hand. The doorbell rang insistently. Mark jumped, stood up, and looked at the intercom screen. Douglas Hill, the boss, stood on the threshold. In his hand, he held a metal ring with 2 keys. Mark recognized their bedroom key immediately. Small, matte, with a scratch at the base. Mark went down, opened the bottom lock, and opened the door slightly, leaving the chain. "Doug, it's night outside." "What happened?" "It's okay, Mark," Doug said quietly and calmly. "I apologize for the time. The situation is delicate. May I come in? For a minute?" Not convinced. "I brought this." He raised his hand with the keys. Laura threw the key. "It fell to me. Ray has a rule. If there is a dispute or doubt, you can do a consent check in a comfortable environment for everyone. You left, that's fine. I came to return the key and close the matter. And yes, it is work-related." Mark took off the chain and opened it wider. "Come into the kitchen. 15 minutes, and no tricks." Doug nodded and walked inside, carefully wiping the soles of his shoes on the mat. "Is there water?" "Take it from the refrigerator." They sat down at the high kitchen island, Mark resting his palms on the countertop. "Speak directly." "What do you mean, work-related?" "We're building a culture where people don't make a big deal out of other people's choices," Doug began, his voice even. "You have a strong team, and I'm considering you to lead our Florida operations. But 2 skills are important for this role: maintaining boundaries without aggression and respecting that others live differently. You had a stressful evening today. I saw you leave. That's okay. The question is, what's next?" "Then I live at home and work," Mark said. "That's all." Almost, Doug put the keys on the table. "Ray has a consultant. She's in our programs, too. She's upstairs now. I let her in through the back slide door. It wasn't latched. Sorry if that upsets your expectations. We did it so you wouldn't be embarrassed in front of the neighbors. It's not a trap. It's a form of conversation." Mark raised his head sharply. "Stop. Who's upstairs?" "A consultant. Not Laura. Laura stayed with Ray. We don't bring people in without consent. But the key in the cup is an indication of readiness for contact. We offer a safe scenario. You open the bedroom door yourself, see that it's not your wife there, but an invited adult woman who is ready for a conversation within the protocol. We talk about your boundaries, about your sense of control. If you're not ready, we leave. But then I'll still have questions about your reactivity. I have to record them." Mark felt his face burn. "You broke into my house through a sliding door and put some woman in my bedroom. And you call that a safe scenario?" "The door wasn't locked," Doug repeated. "We didn't break the locks. And again, we can leave. But then you'll hear the same thing from HR, only without me involved." Mark got up from the table, went into the hallway, looked at the back sliding door. The handle was indeed in the closed position, but there was no latch. He remembered how he had aired the room and the lock had not clicked. He returned to the kitchen. "I'll open the bedroom, but only to end this circus. and you'll say that we've closed the matter for today. I will, Doug nodded. We've recorded that Mark didn't violate anyone's boundaries. He showed respect, and the conversation went without escalation. That's what's needed. And one more thing, Mark pointed at the keys. This is a physical key to the bedroom. Laura put it there, yes, but this is not permission to enter my house without my consent. Understand? I see, Doug replied calmly. I hear you. They went upstairs. Mark led the way, Doug at a distance. The hallway was dim. Mark turned on the sconce. He went to the bedroom door. His heart was beating fast, but not from jealousy, from anger. He inserted the key, turned it. The lock clicked. Mark opened the door. A woman of about 45 was sitting on the bed. Short, even haircut, neutral knee-length dress, barefoot. Hands on her knees. Next to her was a closed folder with an elastic band. "Good evening, Mark," she said in a calm voice. "I'm Sarah. We met at Ray's. There I was a coordinator. Here I am a consultant. If you don't mind, I'm leaving right now." Mark stood in the doorway holding the handle. "You are in my house without an invitation. That is already against it." "Then I'm leaving," Sarah stood up. "But first, a few sentences. I didn't come for sex. I came to check how you react to a situation where your control is limited. This is not a perversion. This is a working case. If you say no, we'll say no. If yes, let's talk. Then we'll talk for 20 minutes and leave. The choice is yours." Doug remained in the hallway without going inside. "Mark," he said, "no one's spending the night here. This is a short block. You're the leader. You'll have to deal with these conversations with a cool head in your job. I believe you can handle it." "Shut up," Mark said, not raising his voice. "I'll do the rest of the talking." Sarah didn't make any unnecessary movements. She put the folder on the edge of the dresser and remained standing. "Okay," Mark said after a pause. 20 minutes. Downstairs in the kitchen, not in the bedroom." "Okay," Sarah nodded. "I'll put on my shoes and go down." "And leave the bedroom door open," Mark added. "I feel better that way." "Certainly." They went downstairs. Mark poured more water. Sarah sat on the edge of a high chair, put the folder next to her, and didn't open it. "Let me make this clear right away," Mark began. "I didn't agree to anything other than a conversation, and I don't want any of you to include my family in your scenarios." "Okay," Sarah said. "Then, per protocol, I ask, where is your boundary now? What's the minimum goal of the conversation that would be acceptable to you?" "The minimum goal is for you both to leave and forget this idea of the test. I will talk to Laura myself. I am not ready for any meetings or contacts. I feel uncomfortable even talking about it." "I'm writing it down," she said quietly. "Point 2, work. What do you want me to convey in the report?" "Your wording. That I don't participate in games. That I don't interfere with others living as they want. That someone broke into my house, and that I reacted to it calmly, without a scandal." Doug nodded slightly. "We can formalize that," he said. "But HR will still ask why you left Ray, and how you feel about Laura throwing the key. They'll want a structure, not an emotion." "My wife is an adult," Mark answered shortly. "Her decisions are her decisions. I don't have to participate. That's the design." Sarah turned the folder over and opened it without revealing the contents. "The third point," she said. "Questions for yourself. When you left, did you feel fear, shame, or anger? I'm not delving into intimacy. I'm talking about emotion." "I felt annoyed," Mark said, "and humiliated, because it was like an exam that no one announced." "Okay," she noted. "The last point. We'll record a stop word. Any word. If such discussions trigger you later in your work, you'll tell me or HR. That'll take the pressure off." "Let it be enough," said Mark. "If you hear it from me, drop the subject." "Okay," Sarah said, closing the folder. "I'm leaving. Doug, are you staying?" "No," he replied. "We're leaving together." Sarah stood up. Mark walked them to the door. At the threshold, Doug handed him a bundle. Here you go. I don't keep other people's keys. Sorry for the intrusion. Formally, it was an attempt to make things easier for you. In fact, we may have gone too far. I'll make a note of that. Mark that, said Mark, and add that you don't do that again. I heard. One more thing. Mark lingered his gaze on Doug. Don't drag Laura into corporate scenarios. She's not your employee. Agreed, Doug replied shortly. Good night. They left. Mark closed the door, this time clicking both locks. He went to the slide door and set the lock on the bottom catch. He turned on the alarm. He went back to the kitchen, sat down, put the keys on the table, and sat in silence for a while. His eyes hurt. He drank some more water, went upstairs, and opened the bedroom door again. The room was empty. The bed was flat. There was something on the dresser. He approached it. A small white card with a phone number and 2 lines. Sarah, off the record by appointment. Mark took the card and dropped it in the bottom drawer. He closed it. The phone on the nightstand blinked. From Laura, I'll be back before 11. He answered okay and set it to silent. He lay down and realized he wouldn't be able to sleep. The voices of Doug and Sarah were spinning in his head. He felt neither fear nor jealousy, but a cold anger at how easily people in his circle had gotten used to invading his privacy under the guise of protocol. He rolled over onto his back and said out loud, Enough. The morning started early. Mark arrived at the office at 8. The lobby smelled of coffee. There were guest badges on the counter. A slide was playing on the screen by the elevator. Culture of Freedom, quarterly update. An email from HR was flashing in my inbox. Today at 4 p.m., consent and choice mixer on the roof of the business center. Informal, but important. There will be a moderator. Just below, a message in the corporate chat from Doug. I recommend stopping by. It helps keep the team on the same page. Mark put the letter down and went into a conference room with a window overlooking the parking lot. At 9, the stand-up started. The team talked about tests and release dates. No one mentioned the evening. At 11:30, he wrote to Laura, How are you? The answer was short, Everything is okay. I'll discuss a few things with you tonight. No smileys. At lunch, Mark sat in the cafeteria across from Maya from HR and Leo, the product manager. They ate salads from plastic containers. Are you going to be on the mixer? Maya asked, her voice friendly but official. I'll drop by for 20 minutes, Mark said. It's not a lecture, Leo added. More like exercises in the series How to Talk About Personal Things Without Turning It into an Argument. The moderator is external, normal without pathos. Who? Leo shrugged. Sarah, I think. Works for several companies, leads groups on borders. Mark nodded without commenting. By 4, the office was half empty. People were going up to the roof on the escalator. The bartender was mixing non-alcoholic cocktails with tea and soda nearby. A sign on the table read, Alcohol optional, limits mandatory. Gray clouds hung over the city. The wind was warm. Sarah was already there. She was wearing a simple pantsuit and sneakers. She was talking to the site coordinator, holding a tablet. She saw Mark, nodded, but did not approach. Professional distance. Doug chuckled. Glad you're up. Get yourself something non-alcoholic. You'll need your brain. Mark got a club soda with lime. Someone at the bar was making jokes about grown-up lemonade. The music was playing softly. Sarah clapped her hands. Colleagues, let's begin. No circles of confessions, everything is practical. 2 short blocks and 1 scenario. The first is a compliment without appearance. We split into 2. The task is to say 2 specific compliments to the person in front of you without touching on the body, clothes, and age. Then we switch. Mark ended up with Jessica from support. She often saved releases, but rarely received thanks. You always respond to clients before we ask, not after, Mark said. It keeps us on time, and your bug reports are clear. They're good for newbies. Jessica smiled. Thank you. This is unexpected from you in a good way. My turn. You don't raise your voice when everything is falling apart. It's noticeable, and you can explain the product in a language that finance understands. Sarah walked between the pairs and took notes. She stopped next to them and bowed her head slightly. The tone is okay. There are specifics. Next, exercise 2, boundaries in conversation. Each formulates one phrase with which he closes the topic if the interlocutor presses, not rudely, without discussion. Mark knew in advance what he would say. Enough. Let's get back to the tasks. Short and no judgment, Sarah noted. Suitable. Someone nearby said, "My boundary is not an office topic." Sarah raised a finger. The phrase should work both in life and at work. Try to be neutral. Doug stood by the column and listened. Maya recorded something on her phone. And the last block said, Sarah, scenario. Your partner attends a lifestyle party. You don't want to attend, but you have mutual friends and colleagues. How do you behave as an adult and as a leader so as not to traumatize anyone, including yourself? People began to buzz. Several hands went up. We do it this way, Sarah continued. We split into threes. One tells us what he'll do. The second asks clarifying questions. The third monitors the language, avoiding invalidation, avoiding the words normal abnormal. 5 minutes per circle. Mark was joined by Leo and Jennifer from marketing. Mark began. I clearly say that I do not participate. I will discuss with my partner what does not suit me. At the same time, I do not humiliate others. I leave the event if I feel pressured. At work, I do not discuss details. If a colleague asks, I answer that everyone has their own model, I choose mine. Leo asked, what if your partner thinks that you are closed? It's her right to think so, said Mark. My right is to live within my own boundaries. Jennifer, an observer, noted, the language is even. There is a risk of sounding cold. Add a phrase about respect for the choices of others. Okay, Mark nodded. I respect that others choose differently. Sarah came up and stopped at the edge. 3 things. First, don't make excuses. Second, state your choice without judging someone else's. Third, be prepared to leave the room without explanation. This is not a show. This is self-care. Mark noticed that her tablet showed a grid names in columns, opposite colors. He couldn't see the labels, but he understood the logic. Green, yellow, red. He felt that the group was an audit. He remembered the night kitchen and the card in the drawer. After the exercises, snacks were served. No mini burgers, just veggies, crackers, hummus. Doug came over with a plate. You're holding up well, he said. No defense, that's obvious. I speak as I think, Mark answered. That's right, Doug said. We need someone next quarter who can handle the Florida side without too much drama. Stay the course. Maya joined in. 2 minutes, Mark. A short interview, just recording what you got out of it. They walked back to the counter. 3 quick questions, Maya said, turning on the recording on her phone. 1. What does consent mean to you? A clear yes without pressure, Mark said. It can turn into a no at any moment. 2. Polyamory as a phenomenon, a relationship. Adults decide for themselves. This is not my model, but I am not a subject judge. 3. What do you do if a colleague carries personal boundaries into a work situation? I'm stopping the conversation. I suggest discussing it with HR or the moderator. I'm returning the focus to work. Thank you, Maya said. That's enough. Sarah was talking to another group at the time. Then she came up to Mark. She stood a little further away so it wouldn't look personal. I have recorded yesterday's situation as closed, she said calmly. No claims against you. In the future, always close the slide door. This is practical advice without subtext. I'll take that into account, Mark replied. And one more thing. If you want to discuss a couple of things without reporting, call the number on the card. It's not a corporate line. I don't pass on recordings. The choice is yours. I will think. Think about it, she nodded and returned to the group. By 6 o'clock, People were starting to disperse. Some were heading for the elevator, some were lingering at the railing, looking down at the parking lot. Doug shook Mark's hand. Well done. No extremes. That's appreciated. Thank you. Mark went down to the first floor, past the reception desk. He got into the car in silence. Laura's message flashed on his phone. I have therapy at 7:30. I'll be back later. He replied, Okay, I'll be home. On the way, he stopped at a small cafe with a neon sign that read Cafe Driftwood. He ordered a turkey and salad to go. While he was waiting, he met Jim, Carla's husband. He was smiling, as always. I heard you were having a corporate party on the roof today, Jim said. It's a good thing. It makes people calmer. We'll see, Mark answered. The main thing is to keep still, Jim said. That always works better here. At home, Mark put the bag on the table. He took off his shoes. He turned on the light above the stove. Out of habit, he checked to see if the bottom lock was closed. It was. He sat down and opened the container. The food was warm. He ate slowly. There were no images in his head, only a list. Don't argue. Record. Don't open anything you don't have to. He remembered the markings on Sarah's tablet and realized that today he was in the green. For a while. At 9 o'clock, Doug texted back. Thanks for your participation. Formally, everything is okay. Mark wrote, accepted. Laura called at 10. I'm late, she said without apologizing. How was your evening? Working meeting on the roof. Exercises about boundaries. Useful. Rather, it is clear. Okay? I'll arrive after 11. Don't wait. I'm not waiting. They hung up. Mark put the mug in the sink and wiped the table. He turned on the night light in the hallway. When he went upstairs, he saw the same card on the dresser again. He hadn't touched it. He closed the drawer. He opened the window. He checked the lock on the sliding door again. He thought he had made it through the day. But it was clear that this was not the end. This was a stage. He realized that a system of questions and marks had been built around him. He had played by the rules, and they had let him through. He was neither happy nor angry. He had simply remembered. The phone blinked. Don't forget to take out the trash tomorrow by 7 o'clock HOA. He chuckled, but quickly wiped it away. He set the alarm for 6:30 and went to bed. The alarm went off at 6:30. Mark got up, threw on a t-shirt, and went out into the yard. He carried the trash cans to the curb. The HOA required them to be put out before 7 and taken away no later than noon. It was damp outside. Tom, a neighbor, was jogging and stopped to catch his breath. Alive? He asked. It's fine, said Mark. Yesterday there was a corporate party on the roof. A rehearsal about boundaries. You didn't press self-destruct, by the look of it, Tom chuckled. Carla's sending reminders about the tanks. Don't forget. Already installed. Tom nodded and ran on. Mark went back into the house, made coffee, and opened the intercom app on his phone. He wanted to make sure what time Laura returned. The history showed 12:42 door opened, 12:44 closed. Half an hour later, 1:17 opened again, 1:18 closed. The video file loaded quickly. In the first one, Laura enters, carefully places her shoes on the rug, takes off her earrings right in front of the mirror, looks back at the hallway. In the second one, she comes out in a sports jacket and with a small black backpack, looks at her phone, quietly closes the door. Mark rewound. He found similar nighttime markers. Tuesday, 1:03. Last Thursday, 12:58. He zoomed in to see the taxi screen or the number. Nothing. Just a dark courtyard and headlights. He opened Laura's car app. They'd added remote access a couple of years ago to keep the cabin warm in the winter. Under trips, the last 2 weeks showed overnight routes, leaving at 1:20 am, returning around 6, and the destination address was repeated. Bayview Townhomes, 4300 Seaside Boulevard. Mark jotted it down in his notebook. He saw that on some trips the car hadn't been used, which meant it had called a cab. But on 3, it had driven itself. He put his phone down. At 7, a text came from the HOA. Thank you for putting out the tank. Reminder, keep lids tight. Mark turned off notifications. He made a second coffee, sat down at his laptop, and opened his banking app. Total expenses were in order. He hadn't seen any on Laura's personal card. They had separate accounts. But the total included 2 payments to a storage service called Lux Locker, a few receipts from a grocery store near Seaside BLVD. Mark looked at the map. It was near the same complex. He wondered what to do with this information. He didn't want to hire a private investigator. He didn't want to hack phones. He wanted to understand what was going on without getting hysterical. He texted Laura, home at 8 today. A minute later, she replied, therapist until 8:30, be there at 9. He put on a shirt, drove to the office, and carried on as normal for the rest of the day. No conversations with Doug and Maya. No discussions of culture. After work, he stopped by the HOA office. There was a receptionist named Susan sitting in the reception area, reading a spreadsheet with the pool cleaning schedule. Good morning. Good evening already, said Mark. I need a statement of our car's passages through the gates for the last 2 weeks. I was told I could get it. Yes, Susan nodded. Write a request to security at Seabreeze and indicate the sticker number. The deadline is 3 working days. Should I send it to you by email? Please. There is an emergency. 1 key is missing. I want to check if there were any strange entries. Susan looked at the screen. I'll write it down as courtesy report. To your email? Yes. Anything else? No, thank you. On the way out, he met Carla. Is everything okay? She asked, not hiding her curiosity. I'm asking for a report on the gate, Mark replied. I want to check who entered and when. My key went for a walk for a couple of hours. That's right, said Carla. Access is a big deal. If you see anything weird, let me know. That evening, Mark drove to the address on the map. Bayview townhomes lined the canal. Palm trees, white facades, smooth walkways. The parking lot was open. He parked at the shopping plaza across the street, got coffee at Seaside Beans, and sat by the window. From the cafe, he could see the gates to the complex and the house numbers. The sign at the entrance read, Units 118. He waited. At 9:37, a white Tesla pulled up and Laura got out. She was wearing the same jacket she had on the night before. She was wearing jeans and sneakers. She walked quickly, without looking back. A man met her at the gate. He was a little taller than Mark, about 50, had a neat beard without a mustache, a dark blue shirt half tucked in, and a leather bracelet on his right wrist. He didn't kiss her on the cheek. He just took her hand and led her to the entrance. They entered Unit 12. Mark looked at his watch. 9:41. He sat in the cafe for another 20 minutes, then went out and walked along the plaza. There was a wine shop nearby, and behind it a nail salon. A girl was standing by the ice machine, loading bags into the trunk. Mark asked, Excuse me, do you live in Bayview? I need Unit 12. Do you know how to get there? I need to leave my documents. I don't live there, the girl answered. But the guy with the beard, he's there often. I see him in the evenings. He has a dog, I think. A black Labrador. Got it. Thank you. Mark got back in the car and drove home. He kept telling himself, no scenes. At home, he turned on the TV without sound and sat down at the table. At 10:58, the intercom showed, Entry, Laura. On the screen, she looked as calm as she had left. She took off her jacket, put her phone on the shelf, and went into the kitchen. Hi, she said, as if she had just returned from yoga. Have you had dinner? I stopped by a cafe. Were you staying late at the therapist's? At the therapist, she said calmly. We've been working on the control issue. I have a strong reaction to your correct decisions. I'm learning to accept that. How's your day been? Calm down, he said. I ordered a report on the gate from HOA. For what? I want to check if our keys are wandering. Yesterday, someone opened the slide door. Doug did it, Laura said without pause. I found out after the fact. I wrote to him not to do it again, and he should have told you. I said so, Mark replied. It won't happen again. They dined on the leftovers of the salad. Laura told him about a new student at her Palate studio. Mark listened, noting how easily she held the line, not a single unnecessary word. He didn't bring up the address on Seaside BLVD. He didn't have the energy to argue. The report from the HOA arrived that morning. A spreadsheet with dates. Laura's car exited at 1:19 am. Entered at 5:53 am. Exited last Tuesday at 1:02 am. Entered at 5:41 am. The caption read, "Data collected automatically from sticker number." Mark saved the file. Then he opened the insurance company app on Laura's car and found the service records. There was a contact for Ethan Morales. The number had a local network code. Laura had had a minor fender repair done a year ago, and Ethan Morales was listed as the person in charge. Mark typed the number into Google Contacts. No photo, just initials. He turned off search. In the evening, he drove to Seaside BLVD again, but this time he stopped not at a cafe, but in the Publix parking lot. He saw Laura at 9:20. She was walking next to the same man. He had a leash in his hand. The black Labrador really was walking next to him. They stopped near a bench. The man said something. Laura nodded. They separated. He took the dog into Unit 12. Laura walked past, got into his car, and waited. A minute later, he returned without the dog, got behind the wheel. The car drove off toward the shore. Mark followed at a distance, keeping with the other traffic. They parked at a small bar on the waterfront, the Sand Bar. Mark sat in the far corner. The bar was half empty. They sat at the counter, ordered drinks. Mark heard snatches of. "I don't want to hide anymore," Laura said. "We are not hiding," he answered. "We are taking care of ourselves." "Mark isn't ready," Laura said. "This is not news." Mark went to the bathroom and sat in a booth while they ordered appetizers. When he came back, they were laughing. He realized this wasn't a fling. They were used to it. They knew the menu. They knew the waiter by name. He remembered the waiter's name was Matt. He left before them. At home, he turned on the intercom again and waited for Laura to appear on the screen. At 11:12, she came in. At 11:14, she left. At 5:47, she returned. In the morning, she behaved as usual. Coffee, a short conversation, a rug by the door. There was no ring on her finger. She rarely wore it in the morning because she did palates. Mark took his wedding ring from the box and put it on the shelf in the bathroom. Not demonstratively, just put it. He didn't want to pretend anything. The next day, he called Sarah. Not the corporate number, but the one on the card. "It's Mark," he said. "I need 20 minutes in private. Not for a report. I'll pay." "Would tomorrow morning at Cafe Driftwood suit you?" she asked. "Yes. We're talking only about you. No wife, no job. Agree?" "Yes." He arrived on time. Sarah was sitting by the window without a tablet, with a paper notebook. "How can I help you?" she asked. "I need to figure out how to live without constant monitoring," Mark said. "I'm already checking the cameras, looking at the gates, the addresses. It doesn't make me feel any better, but I can't close my eyes yet." "Then today we record when you look," Sarah said. "And why? Do you want to catch it? Or do you want to confirm what you already understood?" "I already understood," Mark said. "Laura is not experimenting. She is in a relationship. The man with her is not new. They have a dog, they have common habits, they go to the same bar. This is not a one-night stand." "What did you do when you realized?" "Nothing," Mark said. "I got in the car and drove away. I don't want a scene in the bar or at the gate. I don't want to lie to myself that this is part of the culture. I just want to avoid being thought of as an idiot." "That's a clear goal," Sarah said. "What can you do today?" "Stop chasing at night," Mark said. "Stop checking the intercom once an hour. Talk to Laura calmly and write down important things on paper. Don't sign anything for the bank without reading it. And close the slide door." "That's enough for a week," Sarah said. "If you get upset, call me and say that's enough. That'll be a signal that you need a break, okay? He paid for the coffee and went out. It was 10 minutes to the office. He drove slowly. There was no joy, but it was clearer. He formulated a few rules for himself and decided to follow them. The keys were in his pocket, and he no longer wanted to check them for every sound. In the evening, Laura said, "We have a therapist on Saturday. I made an appointment. Trendy, but smart. He's not about who's right, he's about what next. Will you come?" "I'll come," said Mark. He looked at her hands. The ring was gone. She noticed his gaze, but said nothing. He said nothing either. No theatrical gestures, just simple actions that could be tested. Bells, paper, locks. The therapist's office was in a small business center off the highway. On the door was a sign, Avery Fox, LMFT. In the lobby were chairs, a mini fridge stocked with water, white noise from a speaker. The receptionist handed out 2 clipboards with forms: consent for therapy, cancellation policy, card storage permission. "Sign before we start," she said. "You can refuse to record sessions for training. There's a separate checkbox at the bottom." Laura immediately began filling it out. Mark sat down next to her and read the lines slowly. He crossed out the section about recording meetings and signed the waiver. He left the box about permission to exchange information with HR and corporate consultants blank. "It's about the exchange with HR," Mark said. "I don't agree." "That's the standard," the administrator replied. "It's impossible without consent. You don't have to sign." "I won't," said Mark and handed over the folder. The therapist came out on time. Short, neat, in light trousers and sneakers, he had a tablet in his hands. "I'm Avery Fox," he said. "Avery is fine. Let's go." The room was bare. 2 chairs next to each other, a third across from them, a small table, napkins, a glass board with markers. Avery sat down across from them and turned on the timer on his phone. "The first session is 60 minutes. I have a structure. We will start with the goals. Then I will ask some clarifying questions. At the end, I will give homework. Is that okay?" "Yes," said Laura. "It fits," Mark nodded. "Laura, let's start with you. What is the request?" "We've reached a dead end," she said. "I want more freedom within the boundaries. I'm not talking about chaos, I'm talking about honest agreements." Mark responds with closure, control, inspections. He avoids conversations. "I'm tired." "Mark, I want our marriage contract respected," he said. "We are monogamous. I didn't sign anything else. I'm not okay with the nightly disappearances and the manipulation of the word freedom. I don't want to live in a game of cups and tests." Avery nodded and raised his marker. "I'll separate the roles to make it clearer," he said. "In your pair, judging by your words, one plays the role of controller, the other the researcher. This is not an accusation, it is a description of the dynamics. The controller responds to anxiety with restrictions. The researcher responds to pressure by retreating into autonomy. Do you agree with this framework?" "Yes," said Laura. "No," said Mark. "I don't like the word controller. I don't sit by the door with a stopwatch. I put a lock on it and ask you to respect it." "I will," Avery said calmly. "Then I propose this. In this session, we do not discuss who is right. We discuss how to live on without daily conflicts. I am introducing 3 rules of conversation. We only talk about ourselves. We do not generalize, always never, and we do not argue with the experience of others. If someone goes into judgment, I stop. Ready?" "Yes," said Laura. "Ready," Mark said. "Good. Laura, tell us what space means to you, specifically." "I want to have the right to an evening without reporting," she said. "I want my husband not to check the cameras and not to conduct inquiries. I want the conversation about our relationship not to turn into an agenda where he dictates the points." "Specifics, how many evenings?" Avery asked. "1 or 2 a week. No schedules or interrogations." "Mark?" "For me, space is honesty," he said. "It's okay to go away for the evening, but without lying about a therapist." and without being confronted with someone else's keys in my home. I need to know the basics. Where are you? Are you safe? Will you return? And I want to have the right to say no to anything that involves third parties. So you need transparent status, Avery clarified. Not control, but information. Yes. Laura, I'm ready to write I left. I'll be back at 6, she said. But I'm not ready to say with whom and where, and I'm not ready to justify my interest in new people. I'm an adult. I'm not a cheater. I'm an explorer. Mark tensed his jaw. I hear that, he said, but it sounds like a parallel relationship to me. It's not my format. Avery raised his palm. Stop. The words cheating and parallel are evaluative. I understand your position. Let's talk in terms of plans. There are 3 models: strict monogamy, monogamy with agreements open. You are now on the border between the first and second. The second model is rules. I can help formulate them. But for this, the controller must loosen his grip, and the researcher must accept responsibility for safety and honesty. Ready to try? I'm ready, Laura said. I'm open to a conversation about rules, but not an open model, Mark said. And I won't accept surprises like overnight guests without my consent. That makes sense, Avery said. Point 1. No third-party access to the home without explicit consent from both parties. Point 2. Gawk 'em back notices for nights out. Point 3. No corporate scripts in the family space. Point 4. A weekly, no accusation talk hour. Point 5. Sexual behavior is to be discussed only with the consent of both parties without coercion. Point 6. Any recording or reporting is to be done with the consent of both parties. That's the basic package. Laura nodded. I agree with the first, third, and sixth, she said. The second, yes, but without details. The fourth, yes, but not in the form of a meeting. Mark. The first, third, sixth, yes, he said. The second, yes. The fourth, yes, but with a timer. The fifth, yes, but only voluntarily. And one more point. No cups or invitations from our colleagues. I don't want to mix work and personal matters. We'll write that down as number 7, Avery said. Don't mix work and personal practices. Now the tricky part. Laura, you mentioned pressure. How does that manifest itself? Cameras, reports, closed doors, she said, and the constant I don't have to. I don't ask him for reports, and he turns on security mode over little things. That's not life. Mark, I use cameras to know who's coming in after the slide door incident, he said. I don't read the messages, I don't follow her. I made a couple of trips, yes. I wanted to understand if this was a game or a relationship. It was a relationship. I didn't yell or make a scene. I want clarity. Okay, Avery said. Then I'll call it self-defense instead of control. But self-defense can become control if you're being covert. Your rule for the week: no surveillance. Open-ended questions only. Agreed. Yes, Mark said. Laura, your rule: no lies about the therapist and meetings. If you leave, write it down. I left for personal reasons. Do you agree? Yes. Now here's a topic you won't like, Avery said. Emotional abandonment. When one partner walks away from a negotiation, the other registers it as a refusal. Yesterday, Mark walked away from a party. Laura took it as an abandonment of the dialogue. For the future, I suggest a protocol. If one is not ready to continue, he or she briefly communicates and sets a time to talk, no later than 48 hours. This reduces the feeling of abandonment. Mark clenched his fingers. I left because I didn't want to participate, he said. But okay, I can write. Not ready, we'll discuss tomorrow at 7. Accepted, Avery said. Homework: everyone writes a list of don'ts and do's, no grades, plus a phrase that helps you calm down in an argument. Mark has enough. Laura, I hear, but I need time. Excellent. The last 2 minutes are about the future. Do you see marriage in a year? I see us in the same house, Laura said, with rules where I don't have to hide, with respect for my choices. I can see us in the same house, provided it's honest and a closed format, Mark said. If there are no rules, I don't see the point. Then it's better to leave quietly. The timer rang. Avery turned it off. You've done a good job, he said. The next meeting is in a week. If you want, we can invite a third party to one session, a mediator for legal issues. This is not about divorce, this is about agreements. At the counter, the receptionist gave Laura a receipt for the insurance company. Laura put it in a folder. In the parking lot, Laura started the car and turned on the air conditioner. I liked Avery, she said. He doesn't push. He sees that you're closed off. He was quick to label, Mark said, but at least he offered specifics. I agree with his points, and I won't sign a trade with HR. Do as you wish, Laura said. What's important to me is that you acknowledge emotional abandonment. I admitted the protocol, but not the guilt, he replied. These are different things. She nodded. They drove home in silence. During the day, Douglas called Mark. How are you? He asked cheerfully. I heard you and Laura are in therapy. I want to say that's a strong move. We're opening a new line to Florida next month. I can see you there. We need people who don't make a tragedy out of freedom. Let's have lunch this week and talk about it. Okay, Mark said. I have a window on Wednesday. Great. I'll reserve a table. Mark hung up and sat down at his desk. He opened the folder of papers Laura had left on the dresser. Receipts, Avery's business card, a sheet of rules. On the sheet, Laura had underlined, no details notice, 1 hour of conversation without accusations, no corporate scenarios at home. No mention of ending the nighttime departures. He picked up a pen and wrote in the margin, no third parties in our home or at our family events. In the evening, Laura suggested pizza. They ate in the living room. The TV was off. The conversation was short and even. I have a class until noon on Sunday, Laura said. Then I'm busy. I'll be home in the evening. Write the time, said Mark. And let's talk for an hour tomorrow at 7 o'clock. I'll bring my list. I'll bring mine, she said. Mark woke up at night and checked his phone. Nothing. He didn't open the intercom. He lay there and repeated his point. No surveillance for a week. It was hard for him, but he endured. In the morning, he took out the bins and saw a message from the HOA. Starting Monday, check the facades after heavy rains. He set a reminder, closed the slide door with both locks, and went to the office. In the morning, Laura left a sticky note on the table. Appraiser coming at 12:30. HOA asked for an update after the rain. This is a formality. Below that, feng shui consultation at 3 p.m. 1 hour. Want to change the layout of the living room. Mark looked at the calendar on his phone. The same events were there, added by Laura. He wrote, I'll be home until 4. The answer came shortly, okay. At 12:25, a sedan pulled up with a coastal appraisal's magnet. A man in a light shirt introduced himself. Nate Kramer, licensed appraiser. Need access to rooms, a couple of photos of the facade, footage, utility system passports. Will take 40 minutes. He walked quickly through the house, photographing the bathrooms, kitchens, facade, garage. In his notebook, he noted, new roof 2019, HVAC 2021. He asked for documents for the impact windows. Mark pulled out a folder with papers. Finally, Nate put 2 forms on the table. There are standard permissions here. Owner authorization to access and borrower consent to verify insurance. See the stickers, sign them, and I'll send you a report by email. The bank sometimes asks for these signatures to update the file, even if you haven't refinanced anything yet. Mark looked through the headings, saw familiar wording, and signed. He wrote the last name legibly. Nate packed the form in an envelope and left. 10 minutes later, a letter arrived. Draft appraisal, not for distribution. Mark opened it. Area, condition, computers in neighboring houses. The final assessment was higher than he expected. At 15 to 3, a woman arrived with a suitcase on wheels. On the business card, Paige Lynn, home flow. On the form, consultation on feng shui and ergonomics. Laura opened the door and smiled. Paige, we need to improve the flow. The living room is overloaded. Paige walked into the house and pulled out a tape measure, sticky-colored circles, and a tablet. I'm not an esotericist, she said right away. I'm talking about movement and zones. Your living room is visually narrow because of the cabinet. I would move the sofa, remove one chair. In the bedroom, that's fine. Let's leave it alone. In the kitchen, you can expand the island. For this, banks sometimes ask for title clearance before renovation, minor clarifications in the rights so that contractors can issue permits. What does title purity mean? Mark asked. It's safe, Paige said. Sometimes families with a joint mortgage have nuances. Who is the primary borrower? Who signed the disposition? Before major repairs, you can do a title update or a simple internal consent so as not to slow down the transaction. This is not a transfer of rights, it is an agreement to specific changes. Laura nodded. I'm just thinking about the island and moving the sockets. I have a contact at the bank. They'll tell me what's needed. We want to move quickly. Paige drew a diagram and gave a list. Move couch, remove chair, light over table. Then she asked for a photo of the meters and water heater, just in case for the contractors. Mark took a photo. At 4 o'clock, a courier from Atlantic first arrived. He brought an envelope with a sticker saying, Rate Review Package. Laura put it on the table. It's to check the HELOC rate, she said. We've been wanting a loan for improvements for a long time. The bank is doing a no-cash line. A couple of signatures are needed. Today, only authorization. We'll discuss the line itself later. She laid out the paper. Borrower signature authorization, occupancy and owner consent, 14506C for the tax statement. The first two had sign here stickers on them. Mark read the top paragraphs. Under owner consent, in small print, was a long paragraph about waiver of homestead rights solely for purposes of contemplated refinance or home equity line. He paused. What is homestead waiver? That's the Florida standard, Laura replied, without changing her tone. Without it, no bank will give you a line if the house is married. That's not a transfer of title. That's a consent. Look at the second page, it says, does not transfer title. I called the manager. I told him my husband was worried. He assured me that it was a formality for the bet. Mark finished reading the second page. This consent does not transfer title and is limited to the transaction described. He picked up a pen and signed both forms. Laura carefully folded the papers and sealed the envelope. Thank you. This will save us a couple of weeks. By 6, she was texting someone on her phone, arranging for weekend staging. Mark thought it was about furniture and rugs. In the evening, an email arrived from Ray Cosgrove. Thank you for coming. As promised, a short summary of safety and rules. Your participation is recorded as consensual experiment observation mode. Mark's departure is recorded as emotional withdrawal from group process without conflicts. If you need a certificate for work insurance, let me know. Below is an attached PDF with his company logo and Sarah's signature as a consultant. Mark read it twice. The wording emotional withdrawal caught his attention. He wrote to Sarah, I did not sign consent for this type of wording to be used in relation to my family. Sarah responded quickly, this is the internal language of Ray's report. If you like, I will remove the mention of the last name. The meaning will remain. You left without conflict. Mark demanded that the last name and address be removed. An hour later, an updated version arrived. On Saturday morning, Paige showed up with a couple of helpers. They moved the couch, put the nightstand in the garage, and changed the rug. Laura lit candles and put a design book on the table. At 11 a.m., a photographer from Suncoast Realty showed up and shot the living room, kitchen, and front of house. Are we selling? Mark asked. No, Laura replied. This is an open house for evaluation. The agent needs a couple of shots for an external market report. It helps the bank, and if we decide to move later, we won't be starting from scratch. Don't worry. Doug called at noon. Mark, remember about lunch? I'll move it to Tuesday. And yes, good news. Internally, we're discussing the head of the region in Florida. Your name is coming up. People appreciate your stability. Stay on that line. Okay. And, Doug added, you're doing everything right at home. Boundaries without yelling. It shows. After the call, Mark found himself thinking. Doug knew too much about his house. He opened the emails. There was an invoice from Coastal Appraisals addressed to Laura, CC'd to a shared email. Signed, Billable to Borrower, L. Bennett. Enclosed, Client Contact, P. Lynn. Mark flipped through yesterday's rate review packet again. On the last page, in small print, was spousal consent and waiver of homestead for any future refinance, modification, or equity line originated within 12 months from the date below, whether borrower is one or both spouses. He hadn't noticed it yesterday. Today, he read it to the end and felt a heaviness in his stomach. Laura, he called, it's about 12 months. Does that mean you can only open a line for yourself? It says May there, she answered calmly. It's more convenient if the line is on one person. Banks like it that way. We have a common budget anyway. This can be used without me. Using is not stealing, Laura said. You signed it. It's not cheating. I signed because you said formality. And it's a formality. The house remains ours. The repair line is on me. It's easier for you. You don't like paperwork. Mark closed the folder, decided not to continue. On Monday, Space Energy Consultation came to the house as it was written on Page's receipt. Instead of Page, another woman came short hair, a formal suit, a briefcase. She introduced herself as Cynthia Reed, Home Risk Consultant. Laura said it was Part 2 of Feng Shui, the legal block. We'll draw up 2 documents, Cynthia said. A notice of separate property intent and a household responsibilities memo. The first doesn't change the rights. It records the intention to keep track of everyone's investments in future improvements. Useful for taxes. The second is about the distribution of responsibilities. Who's for utilities, who's for insurance, who's for the garden. Is this the family lawyer? Mark asked. No, Cynthia replied. I'm a consultant. I don't give legal advice, just templates. You can take them to your lawyer. Laura nodded. We want transparency. Write that I take care of utilities and insurance, and Mark takes care of the HOA and pool maintenance. Cynthia printed out the forms and stuck on the signature stickers. The notice of separate property intent included the clause, in the case of investments from the personal funds of the spouse of L. Bennett in the house at. The parties recognized them as separate until another agreement. There was also a link to a possible future post-nuptial agreement. I'm not signing this without a lawyer, Mark said, pushing the form aside. The second one, about the duties, yes. The first one, no. Cynthia didn't argue. It's normal. Take it for inspection. My job is to put together a folder, not to put pressure. Laura tensed slightly, but said nothing. They signed the household responsibilities memo. Cynthia packed up the papers and left. That evening, a letter came from the HOA. Open houses must be announced 72 hours in advance. No signs on common lawn. Mark looked at Laura. Did you declare open house? The agent requested a private preview for the appraisers, she replied. The HOA always responds formally, we don't sell anything. That same evening, Laura brought another envelope from Atlantic First. They asked for your signature on the notification for the bank, she said. This is additional confirmation that you are aware of the application for rate analysis. Here and here. Mark picked up the paper. The title was Acknowledgement of Non-Borrowing Spouse. The first paragraph was neutral. The third was long, with the wording, assigning any rights of claim to the house to the bank as collateral. At the end, in bold, non-borrowing spouse acknowledges waiver to the extent required by lender. That's different, he said. I'll sign after the consultation. We need to ship today, Laura said. Otherwise, we'll miss the rate window. This isn't a loan, Mark. This is a rate analysis. I won't sign today. She looked straight ahead. You're pretending again that you don't understand how the processes work. I keep the house afloat. I take care of the banks, insurance companies, contractors. You can at least not slow down. I don't hesitate. I read what I sign. She shrugged and went into the bedroom. An hour later, she returned calm. Then we'll do it your way. But let's agree on a rule. I don't lie to you. You don't sabotage my projects. The house agreement is my project. I need you to stop saying no to everything you haven't come up with. I need you to stop bringing me papers for now. Agreed. The next day, Mark received a letter from the bank. Your application for rate analysis has been received. Case number, borrower, L. Bennett. Non-borrower, notified spouse, M. Bennett. And a copy of the same acknowledgement, only without his signature. At the bottom, signed by borrower, husband notified. He realized that the process was going on without him. That evening, Sarah wrote, "How are you?" "Fine," he replied. Note, emotional withdrawal is often used by lawyers as a marker of emotional abandonment. If you don't want that word in your family papers, record phrases like "wasn't ready to participate," "agreed to postpone the conversation to" in your letters. Mark sat down at the table and wrote a short letter to Laura. Laura, I confirm, I left Ray's event on Saturday because I was not ready to participate. We agreed to reschedule the conversation for Sunday at 7 p.m. I am formally recording this to avoid misinterpretations. Mark. Laura replied a minute later, accepted. Late in the evening, she brought a folder. Please sign this one. Affidavit of residency. The bank needs to confirm that the house is our main one. There are no refusals here, just a signature under the address. Mark looked through it. There really was only an oath about the place of residence and a signature at the notary. She attached a business card of a mobile notary for tomorrow. He sighed and nodded. He signed it at the notary's office on the veranda the next day. The notary checked the rights, stamped them, and took one copy. Laura closed the folder and nodded gratefully. Thank you. Mark went into the kitchen to get some water. He opened the drawer where his keys were and saw that there was a new plastic card there, Access Atlantic First Appraisal. It was given to the appraiser to enter the house with an escort. He put the card back, closed the drawer, and sat down at the table. He realized that the process was happening on several tracks. The bank, the consultants, the reports at Ray's. He kept his cool, signed only what he read. He saw that Laura was collecting facts and paper. He remembered this and decided not to say anything until the meeting at Avery's. On Monday morning, an email arrived from HR. Retrospective on the consent and choice program. Format, cases, conclusions, Q&A. Mandatory for managers and candidates for management roles. At the bottom is a list of speakers. Maya Douglas, external consultant. Name not specified. At 2 o'clock, Mark entered a large conference room. On the screen was the title, Retrospective, Practices of Freedom of Choice. Around the perimeter were bottles of water, notepads. People were whispering about the weekend. Doug stood at the edge, sorting through cards. Maya was checking the recording. We'll start on time, Maya said. Please turn off personal calls. This is being recorded for internal records. Mark sat closer to the exit. Sarah entered the room. The same reserved gait, a folder in her hand. A nod without a smile. He realized the external consultant was her. Thank you for coming, Maya began. We have 3 blocks, a brief report on the events, 2 untitled cases, and a discussion of tools for leaders. Doug chimed in. Our goal is not ideology. Our goal is a work environment without shame and control. People work better when they are not afraid of their choices, and leaders are stronger when they do not dramatize. Sarah connected the tablet to the screen. Case A, she said. A couple in a community. One partner came to a party as an observer and left early. The other partner stayed. The situation escalated due to shame and fear. Risks for work. Conflict transferred to the office, aggression in communications, devaluation of other people's decisions. Positive outcome, conversation about boundaries, agreed upon rules. Negative, hidden checks, evidence collection, escalation with third parties. Several people nodded. Mark felt eyes on him. Maya flipped the slide. Case B, she said. A leader leaves an event without informing the team and conducts a safety check at home that evening. The consultant records that consent was given, the conversation took place, but there remains a trace of emotional abandonment. For us, this is an indicator of dialogue avoidance. Mark raised his hand. Clarification, he said evenly. If you're showing a case about a house and a consultant, say it straight out. Breaking into a house without an invitation is a violation. What's the company's position? Maya looked at Doug, who took the floor. We do not break into homes. In the case described, the back door was not latched. The consultant entered with the agreement of the event organizer and with the subsequent consent of the employee. This protocol is created precisely to reduce tension. We do not encourage surprise visits. We work to ensure that everything is discussed. I didn't give consent to enter, Mark replied. I agreed to talk after the fact to finish. Those are different things. Sarah calmly turned her head towards him. The case file states, the employee defined the boundaries, said a stop word, the conversation ended without escalation. This status is considered positive. And yet the question of entry remains, said Mark. Maya closed the block. We have learned our lesson. In future protocols, entering the house is excluded. Thank you for the remark. Doug changed the topic. We have a guest. We sometimes call on community voices so as not to speak in a vacuum. Today, it's Laura Bennett, a Polites instructor and moderator of the neighborhood group Wellness and Respect. She'll be sharing how the community views emotional safety. Mark's throat tightened. He turned to the door. Laura walked in confidently, wearing a light blouse and jeans. She was holding a piece of paper. Thank you for inviting me, she said. I won't talk about personal matters. I'll talk about principles. Emotional safety is when no one argues with you about a choice that doesn't destroy anyone's rights. It's when there's no one sitting next to you who records checks, makes a threat out of your going out into the world. I work a lot with women over 40. They have to prove to their partners that their interest in life doesn't equal cheating. It's hard. Sarah nodded. Doug stood a little to the side, listening. Mark's ears were ringing. Laura continued. There are people in this audience who say at home, I don't have to, while secretly collecting data. This makes them emotionally unsafe. They don't yell or hit, but they turn relationships into criminal cases. I am against this. Several people applauded. Maya quickly. Thank you, Laura. Questions at the end. Mark stood up. Question, he said. Our company prohibits discussing the personal lives of employees without explicit consent. I did not give such consent, and I did not give consent for my name to be included in your cases. Please record this. Maya answered dryly. The cases are anonymized. There are no names. You are now violating the confidentiality rule by making assumptions. I'm not making assumptions, Mark said. I'm hearing my life on the screen, and I see my wife here, invited in as the voice of the community. Doug stepped forward. Mark, let's not turn the meeting into an argument. Afterwards, we'll go into the conference room and discuss everything. Later, said Mark and sat down. Mark listened in silence for the rest of the meeting. Sarah talked about non-judgmental language of description, Doug about leadership behavior in resistance. At the end, Maya compiled the questions into a form. Right after the retrospective, Maya called Mark into a small conference room. Doug and Sarah were already there. There was a folder on the table. This isn't a disciplinary conversation, Maya began. This is documentation. We need to make sure you understand the expectations. Go ahead, Mark said. Sarah opened the folder. Recording from the roof. Your answers. This is not my model. I leave if I feel pressure. We do not evaluate the position. We record the behavioral pattern. leaving under stress. Next is the community observer's report on the party, emotional withdrawal. You asked to remove the last name, we removed it, but the fact itself remains, plus requests for the intercom and gates, which you registered with the HOA. This indicates a tendency to monitor. The gate request is my safety, Mark said, after the third party's night entry. We noted that, Maya said, but everything is important for the picture. Doug leaned forward. Mark, you are a good manager. But for the role of the regional manager, we need a person who will not drag personal fears into the processes. The third point is letters with attempts to rewrite the wording in Ray's report. You have the right, but the view from the outside is defensive. Mark exhaled. Now my file, he said. The night after the party, my boss walked into my house through an unlocked slide door and brought a counselor. That's not a safe scenario. That's a violation. In retrospect, my wife publicly calls me emotionally unsafe. I don't think it's appropriate for you to use that as a voice of the community. I'll be sending a letter to compliance. Maya's expression didn't change. It's your right. We'll give you the contacts. And one more thing, Mark added. I don't have authorization to exchange data between the therapist and you. Any information from Avery Fox to you is a violation. Make sure that doesn't happen. Sarah replied calmly. We never received anything from Avery. We work through Ray's programs and internal events. Everything you signed up for is in that folder. We didn't take anything extra. Maya moved the letter. Bottom line, we record. Mark Bennett completes the Leader Without Shame program for the remainder of the quarter, attends 2 modules on de-escalation and 1 on conflict management. The recommendation for the regional role remains in effect as long as the plan is met. Agreed? I agree to the modules, said Mark. As for the regional role, it's your business. Then sign under I have read, Maya said. He signed I have read without agreeing with the wording. On the way out, Laura caught up with him. She was standing by the window with a paper. I needed to say, she said calmly, I didn't name names. You performed at my work, he said. You know what you're doing. I do what I think is fair, Laura replied. People need to hear that control without yelling is a problem too. Got it, Mark said. I'll see you at Avery's on Friday. Bring the whole bank package, please. I want to go over the signatures again. I'll bring it, she nodded. That evening, Mark called the compliance hotline. The operator said clearly, describe the event. Mark recounted the night with the door open and Sarah present. He was given a case number. He wrote it down and hung up. An hour later, an email from Doug came. To clarify, entering your home is not a corporate practice. This is a communication error. I take responsibility. This will not happen in the future. Below that, a line, I hope this incident does not affect our conversation about the role. I respect your boundaries. Mark didn't answer. He opened the cabinet, pulled out a folder with rate review and waiver. He flipped through it again. He called a real estate lawyer he knew and left a message. Need a consultation. Question. Voluntary consent. Waiver. Hellock. He put a sticker on the refrigerator. Friday 7 p.m. rules. No charges. Before going to bed, he opened the intercom and closed it without looking. Then he set both locks on the sliding doors and sat on the edge of the bed. He had a simple plan in his head. Compliance, lawyer, session with Avery. He followed it. Not a single extra step. The news this morning was warning of Storm Doris arriving in the evening. The HOA sent out a message. Close shutters, remove patio furniture, move cars to garage. Guests are restricted. Questions, contact duty officer. Mark secured aluminum panels to windows, removed chairs from the patio, checked the generator. Troy at the gate was chatting. Sand is at the clubhouse. Get bags by 4. At 11:10, a man in a jacket with a process server patch approached the house. He handed over an envelope. From Mark Bennett. I confirm delivery. Mark signed the paper and closed the door. On the envelope, petition for dissolution of marriage. Temporary request for exclusive use of home. Inside, a copy of the petition, a summons for an expedited hearing in 2 days via video link due to the weather situation. Attached are attachments, a printout of Ray's consensual experiment report, a letter from Sarah, a screenshot of Laura's therapist schedule, copies of bank forms. One of the attachments in bold, emotional abandonment of family proceedings on the night of. Below, confirmed by witnesses. 5 minutes later, Laura called. Have the papers arrived? The voice is calm. They're here, Mark said, quickly. I don't want to do it in the middle of a hurricane. But the lawyer insisted on urgency. The sooner we determine the regime, the calmer. What regime? I have temporary exclusive use of the house, she answered without pause. You will have access by arrangement with an escort to pick up your things. You can stay at a hotel. The company pays for it. You said yourself that you need air. I didn't say that, Mark said calmly, and I don't agree. This is my home either. The court will decide, Laura said. Mark, I'm not pretending that everything is fine. I don't want to live together anymore. We've moved on to different tracks. That's fair. Fair doesn't mean right. See you at the hearing. After lunch, a text came from Doug. Heard about the storm. If you need shelter, we have a deal with a hotel near the airport. The company will cover it. Mark replied, thanks, and closed the chat. At 3, he went to the clubhouse to get sandbags. The neighbors were there. Tom helped load them. What's wrong with your face? He asked. A summons, Mark said. Laura filed it. She wants a house for the time being. Tom nodded and lowered his voice. They always call it security. The court often gives exclusivity for a period. Don't break down. Take everything you need in advance, and a list of things. The police will have 20 minutes for civil standby. I'm not going to fight. I'm still thinking about where I'll be. I have a guest room, Tom said, for a couple of nights, if anything. Thank you. I don't know yet. By 6 it had started to rain. Mark closed the slide door on the lower latch and switched the alarm to armed. At 8, Laura called. I'll come with a sheriff's officer at 10. I'll take documents and personal belongings. This is so there are no disputes. I'm home, Mark said. I won't open the door until I see your ID. Do what makes you feel better. At 9:55, the lights on the intercom came on. There was a patrol car at the porch. An officer in a raincoat entered and showed his badge. Good evening, sir. Civil standby. Mrs. Bennett has made an appointment to collect personal items in advance to avoid conflict. 20 minutes. No furniture, no electronics, just clothes, cosmetics, documents. Will that be okay? That will do, said Mark. Laura entered without facial expressions in a waterproof jacket. She took off her shoes at the rug. The officer remained in the hall. Laura went into the bedroom, took out several boxes, a cosmetic bag, a folder from the closet. She opened the chest of drawers, took out her ring in a small box. Are you leaving? Mark asked, standing in the doorway. I'll take it, she replied. And some papers. Do you have your own lawyer? Yes, Marissa Vaughn. The judge has a short hearing on temporary orders on Wednesday. You can log in from your laptop. I'll join in. She gathered her things and handed the list to the officer. I confirm. The officer looked at his watch. Time. They walked out into the rain together. The officer got into the car. Laura lingered at the door. Please don't block access to appraisers and contractors, she said. It's for the insurance company after the storm. I don't interfere with the appraisers, Mark answered calmly. I only interfere with illegal entries. Fine. She left. Mark locked the door with both locks. Rain pounded the paneling. He sat in the living room, turned on the desk lamp, checked the generator. His phone blinked. Judge confirms hearing tomorrow at 2 p.m. on Zoom. He turned his laptop around and checked the camera. The next day, the storm was worse. Lights were flickering. The HOA was posting, "Stay home, roads are flooded." 5 minutes before the hearing, Mark put on his headphones. On the screen was a judge in a shirt under his robes, a tiny county seal on the wall. On the left, petitioner L. Bennett and counsel. On the right, respondent M. Bennett, self-represented. The judge briefly. We are going with temporary measures. Children, no. Violence, no. Dispute over housing, yes. The applicant's position? Marissa Vaughn spoke quickly and collectedly. The client needs temporary exclusive use of the house. Reasons: consensual experiment program in the community, attempt to negotiate, husband's departure from the event, recorded by emotional abandonment, further covert inspections, HOA and intercom reports. The house is her place of work. The client is ready to compensate her husband for half of the current expenses. We ask that the husband be prohibited from changing the locks, entering without permission, and preventing assessment visits after the storm. The judge turned to Mark. The defendant: the house is shared. I do not agree with the wording emotional abandonment. I left because I did not participate. Any entry by third parties without my consent was a violation. I do not interfere with assessments. I am against the ban on entry into one's own home. If a schedule is needed, we will discuss it with a mediator. The judge noted something. There's a storm now. We need predictability. I'm not deciding on division. I'm deciding on silence for 2 weeks. Preliminary, temporary exclusive use for the applicant until the case management conference in 14 days. The defendant may collect personal belongings with the sheriff's escort and may be in the house by appointment for no more than 2 hours in the presence of the applicant or her representative. The locks may be changed, but the key or code may be provided to the defendant through a lawyer only for the duration of the agreed-upon visits. Financial issues unresolved. Next with the mediator. The judge looked into the camera. Do both parties understand? Yes, Your Honor, Marissa said. Got it, Mark said. Zoom disconnected. An hour later, a temporary order arrived in the mail. In the evening, when the wind died down a bit, Mark returned home with a sheriff's officer. Laura was already there with a mechanic. They changed the cylinders. The officer stood in the hall and kept track of the time. I'll take clothes, a laptop, a hard drive, documents, Mark said. Take it, Laura answered. He went into the bedroom, opened the dresser, pulled out a folder with certificates, a passport. In the drawer, he saw a small box. Inside was a bunch of old keys with a tag, Old Bedroom Garage. Next to it was a card, Access Atlantic First. Mark took his keys with a fob. He tried the new bedroom lock, did not fit. He tried the garage, also did not fit. He returned to the hall. Give me new keys for the agreed visits. The lawyer will send the code, said Laura. It's in the order. Understood. The officer reminded. 5 minutes. The lawyer will send the code, said Laura. It's in the order. Here are your spare ones. As a keepsake. They don't fit anyway. I know, he replied. The question is, what do you want in the end? The house is mine, she said quietly. You get your fair share. I don't want a war. I want to end it. I tried to do it gently. You chose no. That's a choice, too. You knew I'd walk away from the cup, Mark said. You needed a cover story. I needed clarity, Laura replied. I got it. The officer opened the door. Time. It was still pouring outside. Mark loaded his bag into the trunk. He got behind the wheel and drove to the hotel near the airport. At the reception, the dispatcher found his reservation through Corp Stavka. The room was simple. A bed, a table, an emergency light on the nightstand because of the power outages. Mark put his bag down, put the container with the keys on the table, took out the same matte one, with a scratch at the base. He turned it in his fingers. He did not approach any more doors. He sat down in a chair, turned on the emergency light, and said evenly, without a pause, Whose doors were these anyway? He sat quietly, then picked up a notepad and wrote briefly, Lawyer, mediator, property inventory, letter to bank, revoke consents where possible. Don't argue over trifles. He closed the notepad and put the bundle next to him. He knew what came next. paper, dates, meeting at Avery's, appraisal. No big words. 3 months had passed since Doris. The sky was quiet, and the papers were denser. Mark arrived at the mediator's office. The conference room was dimly lit and filled with bottles of water. The marital settlement agreement lay on the table. Avery Fox was there as a neutral mediator. Mark's lawyer and Marissa Vaughn for Laura were sitting nearby. "Let's go over this quickly," Avery said. "The Seabreeze Drive house goes to Laura. She assumes the mortgage and any liabilities on the loan. Mark gets the cash settlement amount on Schedule B, payable 30 days after closing. Joint accounts are closed, leaving one personal account each. You both waive blame language in future filings. No references to emotional abandonment. Instead, incompatibility of views on prenuptial agreements. Is that okay?" "It fits," Mark said. "That's fine," Laura nodded. "Are we closing the access schedule for things?" Avery asked. "We're closing," Mark said dryly. "That's all I have." Laura looked at him straight. "I don't want war. I want to end it." "We're finishing," he replied. They signed. The notary stamped the papers. Avery collected the folder. "Good luck to you both," he said. "And remember the rules you started with. They'll work in any form of life." At closing, the title company smelled of toner. An employee named Mallory placed a stack of documents in front of them. "Here's a special warranty deed for Laura Bennett," she said. "And here's a transfer confirmation to Mark Bennett's account. Check the details." Mark signed the transfer, checked the amount on his mobile bank. The money arrived. He handed over his HOA pass, his branded pool key, and his Access Atlantic First card. Mallory smiled businesslike. "Finally, sign to receive copies." He signed. Laura put her keys in her new leather bag. There were no hugs, no swearing, no unnecessary words. They went out into the hallway and stopped for a second. "Thank you for your honesty," Laura said, "in your own way." "Take care of the house," Mark replied. "There's a lot of work for you there." "Take care of yourself." They went their separate ways. Mark's company has completed a compliance audit. The letter arrived on Friday evening. The incident with entering a private residence has been recognized as a protocol violation. Coaching has been conducted for the manager. The rules for the participation of external consultants have been updated. Thank you for the signal. At the bottom is a neutral phrase, "Case closed." Doug called for a meeting. "You're still being offered a regional role," he said. "But without the social modules, you'll still be in the public eye. Can you handle it?" "With the schedule, yes," answered Mark. "With the moderations, no. I won't go to Cosgrove, and I won't discuss personal matters in the workrooms. If this is a condition, I will refuse the role and stay in the product." Doug looked at him carefully. "You'll stay in the product," he said after a pause. "We need a quiet person who brings features to release. Region will think differently." "Fair. And one more thing. I admitted the error in the report," Doug added. "No more checks outside of work." Received. Sarah wrote briefly, "Rules have been updated. If we need to end a conversation, coffee at Driftwood, 20 minutes, no appointments." They met in the morning. She showed up without folders. "What is important for you to record?" she asked. "I don't take exams," Mark said, "and I don't want to be judged by my participation in other people's scripts. I've drawn my own conclusions, and that's enough for me." "Then I suggest a simple thing," Sarah replied. "Once a month, ask yourself, where is my boundary now? If it has shifted, voice it to new people. No excuses." "I will do it." And close the intercom on the old house. "This is not a joke." "Already closed," he said. She nodded. "Then that's all for me." Tom helped Mark move. The new address was a rental in a low building on the other side of the canal, with no gate and no HOA. The parking lot didn't have the same trash cans as required, and there was laundry drying on the balconies. The tenant's office gave him a metal key, a plastic key fob, and a gym card. "The doors creak," the manager warned, "but the locks are new. Please don't change them without permission." "I won't," Mark said. In the evening, he assembled the table himself, put in a lamp, connected the router. No cameras, just a regular peephole. He called his mother and briefly told her that he had gotten divorced. She listened, asked about his health, about his job, about his housing. Not a single unnecessary question about the guilty. It was easier. The Hoa letters continued to arrive for a while. Your tanks are upside down. Plan for inspections after rainstorms. He responded with a formulaic response. I am no longer the owner. After a week, the letters stopped. Only the tax mailing remained, which he forwarded to Laura. A notification appeared on LinkedIn. Congratulate Laura Bennett on the opening of Pelican Balance Studio. The photo is the living room in their former home, converted into a hall, mirrors, rugs. Under the post are comments from neighbors and clients. Mark wrote nothing. He closed the tab. With the mediator, they fixed a formal phrase for all future certificates. The parties terminated the marriage by mutual consent. The issues of life experiments are not the subject of the dispute. Mark copied this phrase into his notes. It saved him from unnecessary conversations at work when someone was interested under the guise of participation. In the evenings, he began to visit the golf range more often. Tom brought 2 coffees from the machine and made short, non-edifying jokes. There's no bowl here, he said one day, nodding toward the bucket of balls. Just a ball and grass. Convenient. Convenient, Mark agreed. He had only gone to the sandbar on the beach once, not the one where Laura and her man had been, but the one next door, where the waiter was named Jeremy and where the tables were always empty. He sat by the window, ordered a non-alcoholic beer and a tuna sandwich, looked out at the water. No conclusions, just dinner. The real estate attorney sent a short summary. Your signatures on the HELOC do not create any debt for you because you are not the borrower. In the future, do not sign anything with a waiver without my review. The house and line are the ex-wife's responsibility. Mark thanked her and paid the bill. He had 2 de-escalation modules with HR. The trainer handed out cards with phrases. Mark chose one for himself. Discussing is not agreeing. It worked at work. He stopped wasting time on excuses when someone tried to turn the conversation into a personal one. We're working according to plan, and the conversation returned to the tasks. He and Laura never returned to their old arguments. They met once at the notary's, exchanged copies for the insurance company, and signed for receipt. At the door, Mark asked, Are you happy? I don't seek happiness, she replied. I do what I can handle. That's my level of honesty. It's clear. Are you okay? Laura asked. In order. They parted without making any new appointments. A short time later, an email arrived from Ray Cosgrove, a mass mailing about a new meeting series. Mark clicked unsubscribe. A minute later, a confirmation came. You are no longer on the list. He closed his email and opened the release calendar. Sarah sent one last note. Remember enough. It's not a defense, it's a tool. He responded with okay and deleted the chat. The phone went quiet. One evening, on his way home from work, he stopped at the door of his new home. He pulled a key from his pocket. It was metal, no fob, no Hoa number. He turned it once. The lock worked without resistance. He walked in, set his bag against the wall, and turned on the light. The kitchen was clean. The refrigerator contained a container of ready-made food he had bought on the way and milk for the morning. On the table were 2 envelopes, a rent receipt and a sheet of paper with a gym schedule. He poured water, opened the window, sat down at the table, and sorted the papers into folders. The lease, the schedule of work modules, the mediator's schedule for the next hearing on formalities. A separate pile was the closed documents for the house on Seabreeze Drive. He put this folder in the bottom drawer. The phone blinked. Update, company policy on external events. Off-site check in scenarios are prohibited. Questions for HR. Mark read and turned off notifications. Later, Tom called. I have pizza. Come over? Some other time, Mark said. I'm having dinner at home. Got it. If anything, call me. I'll call. He ate his dinner, put his plate in the sink, closed the window, checked the lock once, and turned off the light. No cameras, no reports, no cups, just a simple key and a door that he opened and closed himself. That was enough for him. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even click to the next one.